What's up, guys? Trevor Dixon here. Wanted to jump on here. We've done a couple videos, and I wanted to do one that specifically just talks about my story, how I got into this, how I started the business, etc. We did a pretty in-depth video on the little intricacies of how we actually established our business and started getting jobs. But I wanted to do a quick video here on exactly what happened with my first job, how I managed it with working another full-time job with the city. So we'll just jump right in. Hope you enjoy. So whenever we decided to start my business, I was currently working for the city of Winston-Salem in North Carolina. I was a rehab advisor. I was working 8 to 5, 40 hours a week. And me and my wife talked about it, and we decided, you know what, we really want more out of life. We're gonna go ahead and make a business. So we went through all the details, which I explained in a previous video, of establishing our name and creating a brand. And then we started doing pay-per-leads, specifically HomeAdvisor and Porch.com. So at this point, I started paying for these leads, and they would come in, and I would make calls on my lunch breaks and set up appointments to go view these jobs after I got off work. My very first job, which is crazy, aside from a couple that I did for friends and family, was this super awesome lady. She had a house here in High Point, right up the street from where I was living, and she had the house rented. And it had been rented for years and years. People had moved out. She was a little older, and she had decided she wanted to sell the property. And she called me to simply paint the outside of her house. At this point, I was advertising that I did everything. So I showed up, and I look at the house, and I'm like, yeah, I can help you with this. I can paint whatever, sounds great. Well, then she found out that I worked for the city and that I was a building inspector, and I had quite a bit more experience aside from just painting. And she invited me inside to look at some other items inside the house. Well, next thing I know, I'm doing an estimate for an entire house remodel. The house had been trashed by the renters, and she wanted me to basically pull everything out and put everything back new. All new lights, floors, cabinets, bathrooms, everything. Honestly, I'm freaking out a little bit at this point because I work a full-time job, and I'm not ready to just quit and jump into this thing. I'm just not ready for that. The only thing I'd done prior to this particular job was just a couple small side jobs for friends and family. So I put the estimate together, and I send it out, and I'm freaking out the whole time because the number is really, really high in my mind anyway, and I have no idea how I'm going to get it done either. I put the estimate together. I called a bunch of people to try to figure out how to estimate it because I really didn't know the best way to charge for this kind of stuff. I didn't want to be too expensive, but I also didn't want to screw myself. So I'm calling a bunch of different people trying to get ballparks of how much to charge this lady. And I put together this estimate, and I think it came up to like $50,000 or $60,000. Huge job in my mind. It was the most money. I mean, that was over a year's salary for me. So I'm freaking out, but I send the estimate. And the lady actually calls me back and gives me a green light. She wants a couple more details, and she's like, okay, we're ready. So now I really got to figure out how to produce this job while working a full-time job. So prior to working for the city, I worked for Habitat for Humanity. I'm sure some of y'all are familiar with that organization. I was a project manager. And I had met this guy that was an awesome painter. He'd fell on some hard times, and he actually ended up in one of the houses we built. He ended up using the Habitat for Humanity to acquire a home. And we became friends. Well, he had epilepsy and a couple other issues and just wasn't able to hold a steady job. So I called him and asked him if he was able to work for me, because he had some experience and he could actually be on a job while I was still working my full-time job. And of course he said yes. Now, this guy didn't drive. He didn't have tools or anything, so whenever that actually started, it created a whole nother level of issues. But before we get there, the lady accepts the job. I set up an appointment to review the scope of work and collect a deposit. You know, I need some running money. I had no cash to buy anything. I can't buy material. I can't hire subs. I can't do anything. I'm broke. And the lady shows up with the full amount in a cashier's check, 50 something thousand dollars. At this point in my business, I had not even opened my bank. I had no business banking account. I had nowhere to put this money. So I raced down to BB&T and I opened up a BB&T checking account for my business, and I deposit the check. And I'm freaking out the whole time. But anyway, a few days later, the check clears and we get started on the project. I bring in my friend that I met through Habitat, and he starts demoing. I call a local dumpster company and have it delivered. I apply for my permit with the city of High Point. And then I start calling people that I'd just met, you know, working with Habitat, working with the city, people that I knew, because at this point there's no way to get this job done without subcontracting it. So I called up a couple roofers and I got a bunch of estimates. I called up several window guys and I got a bunch of estimates. Plumbers, flooring guys, cabinet guys. And I start hiring these people and getting this job done. And it actually goes really well. We get this job done. I think it took us 3 months, and at the end of the 3 months, me and my wife put, I think it was almost $9,000 or $10,000 in our pocket. You know, at this point, we really don't have any business overheads or expenses. It's just me and her and our house. Well, this allowed us to buy some equipment. This allowed us to, actually we used part of the money to buy a home that we were going to be able to establish a home office in. It also was going to have a garage for me to store all this new equipment. And that was really the job that got us our leg up. Well, I still didn't quit my job with the city. After I got that big job, you know, I was back down to these little odds and ends jobs, you know, 1, 2, 3 day jobs, you know, painting this or fixing some decks, installing some doors, the little stuff. And I would bring my friend from Habitat in, and I'd have to pick him up early in the morning before I went to work with the city, and I'd drop him off at the job and get him started, make sure he had all the material, make sure he had all his tools, and make sure everybody was cool, and then I'd leave. And then I'd come and check on him on my lunch break. Then I'd go and pick him up at the end of the day, and I'd, you know, clean everything up, help him finish some things, and go home. And then I'd go run estimates. And I started getting to the point where it was crazy. It was too much work, too many late evenings, and that's when we finally made the decision to quit my job, and that's when I went to work full time. So technically, before I ever even quit my job, I had one employee. And then when I did quit my job, he helped me for a couple of weeks, I think it was, and he ended up falling off. So then it was down to just me and my wife's help when she was available, running around doing these jobs essentially by myself. So that's where we really, really started. But in aspect of quitting my job, that's the reality of how it worked for us. You know, part of it was a blessing, part of it was a God thing, and part of it may have even been luck. But that one job really set the stage for opening up that opportunity to see what was possible and to give us the confidence to actually go forth and, you know, make this a full-time thing. So guys, I hope this sheds a little bit of light on how we did things, and maybe it can help you, inspire you on how you might be able to accomplish the same things. If you like this content, please subscribe, share, and click the little notification bell for future videos. And we'll see you next time. Thanks, guys.